Grandmaster Eugene Perelshteyn, and today I want to show you one of my best games from a recent big tournament, World Open, where I played Maroczy on the black side of the Accelerated Dragon. And as funny as it sounds, for a very positional opening that Maroczy is well known for, I managed to play some great attacking chess. So let me show you this idea. I am black, playing against 2400 strong young player Daniel Range. E4, C5, knight f3, G6. So I prefer the hyper-accelerated move order. And now C4. Typically white plays D4, but this is just transposing. Knight C6, D4 takes. And now black has several ways to play against the Maroczy bind. One is, which I've played many times, knight f6, knight c3, d6, trying to hinder the development of the dark square bishop, because on bishop e3 follows knight g4. So now white typically plays bishop e2, and after exchange on d4, white will have to retreat with the queen back, so black would win the tempo. But I had a completely different idea in mind, and I go for the bishop g7 setup, and you'll see shortly what my plan is. So bishop e3, defending the knight, knight f6, knight c3. So far so good. Now, by the way, just to mention that knight takes c6, bc, e5 is a well-known trick that white simply loses a pawn after queen a5 check, and then queen takes pawn. So that's why knight places to c3 here. And now d6, threatening knight g4, bishop e2. So far so good. Castles, queen d2, and here the main plan, of course, for black is to take on d4 and play bishop d7, bishop c6, hitting the e4 pawn, and then preparing the outpost for the knight on c5. So black is going to follow up with a5 after that, and knight is going to come to d7 and c5. So let's see how I execute this plan. So I take first, bishop takes. Now, why does it matter to take first? Because after bishop d7, you allow white to jump back to c2, right? And now the bishop doesn't belong on d7. So typically, you want to take first. Bishop takes, bishop d7. Now my opponent castles, bishop c6, hitting e4 pawn, f3, and now a5. This is black's main idea. Of course, I can play a5 right away, or I can play knight d7. This is a matter of taste. Some people prefer knight d7, some a5, but it basically transposition b3, knight d7, bishop e3, knight c5. And here the main line is very unusual rook move. Typically one would think that rooks will go to c1 and d1, but here the main line is rook a to b1. And the main idea behind the setup is that the other rook typically goes to c1, and eventually white prepares a3 and b4 counterplay on the queen side. If you've played this position before for black, you might notice that black has played this plan, queen b6, followed by rook f to d8. Then the queen is actually not so well placed on b6. Queen is going to go back to d8, and then eventually black is going to play h5, king h7, queen h8, and put pressure on the long diagonal. It's quite a popular setup for black, but I have a completely different idea in mind. Remember, the theme here is attacking chess. How can black create a powerful attack in this position? Well, you're going to see shortly. For now, I start with either, you can start with the move bishop e5. I actually played e6, which I think would transpose depending on what white does. In the game, I played e6, preparing bishop e5 move. So rook f to d1, of course you want to put pressure on the d6 pawn, and now bishop e5. So far so good, both sides are playing quite well. And now my opponent sunk into deep thought here. So what is white gonna do? If white plays a3, this is a bit slow. I'm gonna play queen h4. If white plays some other move, such as perhaps bishop f1, it's playable, but again, it's a little bit slow. So my opponent wanted to punish me for weakening my d6 pawn. Because notice that typically in the dragon setup, the pawn on e7 very rarely goes to e6. This creates a weakness on d6. He can never, by the way, play f4 because I can take and win with tempo the pawn on e4. But he can attack the d6 pawn, and this is what he does. So after knight b5, there is no way I can defend my d6 pawn. So that leaves me with strategically lost position, one may say, because I have to give up my bishop. And even though it looks more or less defendable, it's actually very, very tough. White has a very concrete plan to play a3, b4. My knight on c5 really has no good retreat squares. My bishop on e5 is not going to feel great, especially after white follows up with f4. And eventually black's position will just crumble. So I have to create something, otherwise I'm going to be strategically lost. And now I play queen h4. Very strong move. It's a prelude to powerful attack, and this combination is actually not very easy to fight at the board. So now white is facing some problems. Do I play g3, allowing the bishop sacrifice? Do I play h3, white is thinking, allowing some dark square weaknesses? And really, white has no choice but to pick one of these two moves. Basically, all the other moves are just bad. Now, of course, f4 loses to knight takes e4 with the tempo, as I showed you earlier, so this could never happen. So my opponent played g3. In hindsight, this is actually a mistake. h3 would have been a better try, but then what's the point of knight b5, you might ask, because I can now play simply rook f to d8. Defend my pawn. Queen is going to go to g3, and really great position for black. But my opponent plays a principled move g3. He is provoking me to sacrifice a bishop. If I retreat with my queen, then my pawn on d6 is going to fall, the knight on c5 is going to be weak. So now I go all out. Bishop takes g3, x-clamp. Pawn takes, queen takes. And now white has two options. King to h1 or king to f1. Well, king h1 looks like a really disastrous move. After knight takes e4, hitting the queen, pawn takes, bishop takes, white is getting mated. So king h1 is not a good move. So my opponent plays king f1, hoping that after knight e4, pawn takes, bishop takes. Really, I only have one threat here, and this is bishop g2. And it's actually not such a big deal, because he can either play bishop f4 here, bishop g2, king g1. Now there is no good square because my queen's under attack. And of course, if queen g2, king e1, and again, I don't really see how I can continue the attack here. Queen g1, bishop f1, and eventually white is gonna win. So let's go back. And so what is black gonna do? How is black gonna open the position? Because knight takes d6 is coming up, queen takes d6 is coming up. And if I play f5, this is a bit too slow. For example, queen takes pawn. If queen check, the king can just go for a little run, not worry about a thing. And If queen h1, then simply bishop f1. The knight on c5 is still under attack, and really I don't see how I can create any dangerous threats. So this is the position that my opponent was happy to get, going for the allowing the piece sacrifice, and I really had to think hard to find the next move. As a matter of fact, I actually saw the next move and the whole idea before sacrificing the bishop, but otherwise black is totally lost, you know. So I start out with the move knight takes e4, X-clamp, pawn takes, and now the hardest move, you might say, the hardest move of the game. Very quiet move, yet very lethal, f7, f5, double X-clamp. Two-piece sacrifice, you know, and white has no defense against mate. This is unbelievable. And this is why even in quiet positional openings, you can always count an attack in chess. Just this is a perfect illustration, Maroczy. Who would have thought? And now basically white is completely lost. If pawn takes, black can mate several ways. Rook takes f5. If e5, then black mates with bishop. And then queen g2 mate. So there is no way that white can move the e-pawn or take on f5, but also there is no defense against f takes e then. On any move, if white doesn't play with the e-pawn, f takes e with mate. For example, bishop f2 takes, threatening taken on f2, queen e1, e3, resigns. So this is really funny that after 21 moves, white is totally lost. So of course my opponent finally saw all of this, and of course he didn't take the knight. Instead he plays a very calm move, queen to d3. So it's clear that black has 3 pawns for the piece, a great attacking position, but still I have to play accurately to put white away. So I can start giving checks with queen h3, but I didn't really see any forced win. Instead, here is how I approach this position. I have 3 pawns for the piece. There is no forced win, yet what is white's next move? For example, white is threatening to take on f5. And then if I play, sorry, on e4, and if I play e5, he can jump back with the bishop to f2. So this shows me that white has a threat. And that's why I play f5 here. For now and for all, I'm stopping f takes e. And now I'm not really worried about knight takes d6. Because first of all, I'm going to pin the knight. And after c5, white is in some sort of Zugzwang position. This is really funny. So all I have to do is simply improve my position. For example, I can give a check, king g1. I can play f4 here, and if pawn takes, this is, you know, overwhelming attack for me. I can take with the pawn, and unbelievable attack again. What else do I have? Well, let's think here. I can play f4 right away. Of course, pawn takes knight, pawn takes wins for me. So that doesn't leave white too many options, probably bishop g1, and trying to defend with all his might here. But I do like the queen h3 check, taking away the g1 square from the bishop. Now, if king comes to e1 here, well, I can always give a check here and pick up another pawn, and this is simply, you know, probably already lost position here. I can even be more tricky. I can give this check, king f1. I can throw in f4 with knight g3 ideas. So just showing you all different plans that could happen. In all lines, white is having serious problems defending. So it's clear that white needs to exchange pieces, so my opponent plays knight to d4. Now e5, very strong move. I don't mind knight taking the bishop. Pawn takes. And now white is in some sort of Zugzwang. He can never take the knight. None of the bishops really have much good moves. The bishop on e3 can only go to g1, for example. The bishop on e2 is dead. The rooks don't play. The queen is out of the game. Whereas black has this huge pawn storm coming white's way. So my opponent didn't find anything better but to play bishop to g1. And now I regroup. Queen check, queen h4, all forced. Knight check, king g2, and queen to g5. Very unpleasant position for white. Again, threatening knight takes e2, and the bishop on e2 has no good squares. So my opponent plays king to f2, and now very strong finishing touch. So look at white's pieces. The bishop on g1 is out of the game. Bishop on e2 is not playing. All I have to do is to open up the position by marching one of my pawns, f5 or e4. But here I play e4 with the tempo, hitting the queen. Of course, pawn takes, loses, because the rook is discovered. Check, hitting the queen. So queen takes d6, e3 check, king e1. Look at white's position. All of the pieces are dead. Bishops are completely out of the game. And now a finishing touch, rook a to e8. Preventing any queen e6 checks. And now, of course, knight takes e2 followed by queen g2 check is deadly. And then rook d8. So that doesn't leave white too many options. He goes for f4, trying to get his queen into the game. After queen h4, queen takes c6, thinking that I don't have any good discovered checks, but this is very wrong indeed. Knight e4 check, really forcing white to play king f1. And so let's see if you can find the finishing move after which white has resigned. This is kind of a quiet move, but yet very lethal. There is no fancy stuff. We don't need to take the pawn on f4. We don't need to play knight d2 check. It's a simple move. White's king is already locked in. All you have to do is play queen to h1. And now there is no defense against knight g3 check and queen takes g1. And by the way, after knight g3 check, queen on c6 is hanging. So he gives me one last check before he dies. Rook f7, and white is completely dead. There is no defense against knight g3 and queen takes g1. And my opponent resigned. So this little game, it's not quite a miniature because it's 34 moves, but nevertheless, I think it's very good illustration of attacking possibilities in such a quiet positional opening as the Maroczy bind. It doesn't even feel that white did anything wrong in the opening. He just made one mistake. He played knight b5. He underestimated black's attack after queen h4 and bishop takes g3, and he paid dearly. But very important lesson is always remember that the rook on f8 is helping in the attack. When black played f5, the rook really became powerful, and there was no defense in all the lines where, you know, the x-ray and the king on f1. So thank you very much, and good luck to you all in especially accelerated dragon position.
This is Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for onlinechesslessons.net. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damien for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.